But then outside there, because you faulted, you couldn't say that my child has done something wrong, so I need to punish my child out there. You come back home with a sense of guilt. Or how Hegel defines tragedy is the conflict of two substantive positions. Of which, yet each of which is wrong to the extent that it fails either to recognize the validity of the other the conflict can be resolved only with the fall of the hero. An example to share. Those of you who are really why but then all other, you realize that the one who is so much liked, so much appreciated, becomes relevant only when the one that is appreciated leaves the scene. And say all bad things to create a kind of enmity to get the one who is liked off the picture. That, to Hegel, is tragedy. It is built on a conflict of two substantive positions, so that whichever one that you choose, the other one gets a bit angry and it's a problem. And it can get resolved only when the appreciated or the hero leaves the scene. Right. Mark, your hand was up. Any problem?
Yes, please, Prof, your line keeps going off and on. So we hear you at a point in time, another time you are off, please.
All right. So let's hope the internet will be stable. It's okay now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. So that is Hegel's theory of tragedy. So basically, Hegel's theory consists of three elements. One, there must be a conflict. Two, there must be a division of the ethical substance so that both sides are justified. Hello? Are you with me or you are gone?
We can hear you. You are rather gone.
I can hear you. It was silent for a while.
Yeah, your line went off, Prof.
Yeah, so the question I'm asking is, do we see this situation of a conflict to a division of ethical substance so that both sides are justified in any book you have read? Is there any book you have read that you think this idea of, oh, both the protagonists and antagonists are right, but then something happens and one must leave the scene and so on? Is there any book you have come across?
Yes, dear blood.
Hello. Yeah. Let's hear you.
Hello. The Animal Farm happens to be a prose. I don't know if it is, but we are not considering only drama.
Yeah, it can be prose, it can be,
I guess then.
no, it can be prose or
Okay,
drama.
then I think Animal Farm will make the case. I don't know because where you have
Which two
Animal Farm,
characters are right?
we
Which
have
two characters?
Snowball and then forgotten the name of the other, the main character, Snowball and then
Any other book
in the Animal Farm.
Napoleon.
Snowball left the scene along the line.
No, that cannot be.
Napoleon.
We are looking at a point where both sides are correct in what they do. Both sides are correct in what they do. There's a book you have read where the main character and then antagonist or whatever, they are all correct at a point in time in whatever they do. Yeah, let's hear you, Janet.
I think Dear Blood.
Janet, let's hear you. Thank you. Which
I'll say
characters are?
the princess, and then the I think the chief or the king. Both of them were
Thank
right
you.
at a point in time.
Thank you. Thank you. So obviously, we would not explain Dear Blood as Aristotelian tragedy. We will not define Dear Blood as Shakespearean tragedy. But then, as she has said, Dear Blood falls within the Hegel concept of tragedy. So there's a conflict. There's a division of ethical substance so that both sides are justified. And the third one is that the implied reconciliation. There's an implied reconciliation. The resolution of any conflict permits a case to be made for the advent of harmony. So if you look at Dear Blood, at the end of it all, there's this attempt to reconcile the two sides. There's this attempt to reconcile the two sides. Because whatever Assem did was right. Yeah. Though Assam has lost almost everything, there is that attempt to reconcile the family of Assam and the family of Penny, who is left with just Kakra. Right. So that is Hegel's concept of tragedy. The next one we are looking at is Shakespearean tragedy. And of course, in Shakespearean tragedy, you will find it mainly in Shakespeare's works. Shakespeare tragedies, you find Shakespearean tragedies. Now, we will say that because Shakespearean tragedy followed immediately after the classical tragedy, there are some similarities between Shakespearean tragedy and the classical tragedy. There are some similarities between Shakespearean tragedies and classical tragedies. When I refer to classical tragedies, I'm referring to Aristotle's idea of there is that similarity between Shakespearean tragedies and classical tragedies. Now, the first similarity that we see between Shakespearean tragedy and classical tragedies is the titles of their plays, the titles of their works. Can someone give an example of the kind of tragedies that we have with Shakespeare and the tragedies that we have with Aristotle? Classical tragedies. When we talk about the titles. Yes, Stan.
Yes, sir. I think they have eponymous characters um, where we have the main character's name being used as the title of the work.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So both Shakespeare and classical tragedies are all eponymous, because they use protagonist Macbeth, and so on. I'm going to talk of all these titles of um, the titles of the tragedies. Right. Now, the second issue is that the second issue hello, can I go on?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The second similarity between Shakespeare's tragedies and then classical tragedies is that most tragic heroes are from dignified backgrounds. Most tragic heroes are from dignified backgrounds. Don't forget that in our Sicilian tragedy, we put on nobles, right? So when it comes to that of Shakespeare, most of his tragic heroes are either praised. Not all tragic heroes are kingly. Most of them are highly placed in society. So in Shakespeare, we may not get the king, but they are in the high echelon of the society. They're in high. Um, now, let's add one similarity to that to Now, there's a difference between Shakespeare's tragic heroes and then Aristotle or classical tragic heroes. For classical tragic heroes, that which gets them to fall can never be attributed to a weakness in them. That which gets them to fall, that which gets her to say that there's a weakness, there's a tragic flaw in them, can never be seen as a weakness, can never be seen as a fault on their part. But in the case of Shakespearean tragic heroes, we can say that it is a weakness in them. For example, the play title Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar. We all know that Julius Caesar is a very proud general, a very proud army general. And we all know the statements that pride goes before.
Prof, please, we can't hear you.
Prof,
For
your
example,
line keep breaking. We can't hear anything.
all right, hello.
Hello,
Hello.
Prof. Hello,
Yeah,
Prof.
it's okay
Welcome
now.
back. Yes, please.
Uh-huh. I have attempted to relocate. Let's see if it will work. Yeah, I think the internet is good here, so we can do our job. Right. So I was saying that one major difference between Aristotle's tragedy and that of Shakespeare is that the weaknesses or the tragic flaws of Aristotelian tragic heroes can never be seen as weaknesses in them, can never be seen as faults on their part, can never be seen as something they've done wrong. But in the case of Shakespeare, we can clearly see as weaknesses on their part or faults on their part. And I was giving a few examples that in the play titled Macbeth, some witches revealed to Macbeth that he will one day be the king of Scotland. The ideal thing is that the king of Scotland must die before he becomes the next king. He didn't have patience to wait. So his wife advises him and they kill Duncan, but then Macbeth doesn't become the king. So this is, hey, here too, you can't hear me.
Oh, we can.
But somebody just wrote that you can't hear me.
We can hear you, dog.
Right. So they kill Duncan, and Macbeth doesn't become the king, and he's also killed in the process. That's greed. That is a weakness. That is a fault. We look at a gentleman called Julius Caesar, who also is a Roman general. And we are told that one major mind them. Julius Caesar wouldn't mind them. And he died because of his failure to obey or listen to his friends' advice. And therefore, we will not say that Julius Caesar's death was something that came out of the blue. No, it was from a weakness. Now, in the case of Aristotle's or classical tragic heroes, we are saying that the tragic flaws do not come because of weaknesses, because of faults on the part of the tragic heroes. It's because they can't do anything about it. That is the difference there. Another distinction between Aristotle and Shakespeare is that there's the violation of the unities. There's violation of the unities in Shakespearean tragedy. There's violation of the unities in Shakespearean tragedy. In the case of Aristotle or classical tragedy, one. Hello. But the people on the internet. I'm someone say the people on the. I didn't. If I'm in cancer, if I'm going cancer. Hello, can someone tell us the 3 unities we mentioned yesterday? Yeah, let's hear you, Anastasia.
Yes, Prof. Thank you. The 3 unities are the unity of time, place, and action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. But if you have read Shakespeare's plays, you realize that Shakespeare doesn't go by the use of place, nor the use of time. It doesn't do that. His storylines are not straight. Sometimes there can be playlets in plays. And a good example is a Hamlet, the play titled Hamlet. In Hamlet, you have the main play, and then Hamlet, the small boy Hamlet, also stages another play within the play. So Shakespeare violates the three unities. He violates the three unities. So we have looked at this broader concept of tragedy from the perspective of Aristotle, perspective of Shakespeare, and perspective of Hegel. I must say that even today, as we speak, the concept of tragedy is still evolving. It is still developing, because the things that were overlooked some time ago are now crucial in determining what a tragedy is. They are not crucial in determining what a tragedy is. Right. So at this point, we can attempt. Let us all attempt with the three or the four parts of tragedy in mind. Let us attempt to define this thing called tragedy. So one, we can refer to tragedy as a change in the fortunes of a character, such that the change is from good to bad or worse, rich to poverty, healthy or health to sickness, noble to ignoble, life to death. There's a change. There must be a change in fortune. Two, the change in fortune must be caused by a misjudgment or miscalculation. Not necessarily a weakness in the character. So the point I'm making is that if it is caused by a weakness, if it's caused by a fault, it's caused by something that the character can do something about it, it cannot be a tragedy. It cannot be it cannot qualify the event as tragic. Three, the change in fortune must cause sympathy among the audience for the character. It must cause sympathy among the audience for the character. So yesterday we talked about an armed robber attempting to attack someone, and then the armed robber is arrested and maybe beaten and killed. Would that be a tragedy? Some of us will say yes, others will say no. We can say yes because if you look at Atamele's definition of tragedy, it's a man's total compulsion to justify himself. So the man must go out there and look for something for his family, but in the process, he's caught and killed. So tragedy, because all armed robbers would also want to feel sympathy for him because they might also be caught one day. But then if you come to the one who succeeded in killing this armed robber, that's not a tragedy. And I mentioned to you that for a text to be described fully as tragic, the effect of tragedy must be enormous. It must affect a broader aspect of society, not just 1, 2, 3, 4 people, and they will say tragedy. No, it must have a broader effect, a wider effect. Right. So this brings us to the end of it. One, we have looked at this thing called literary criticism. We have looked at the essence of criticism. We have looked at the main focus of Aristotle's poetics. We have tried to compare Aristotle's view on tragedy and comedy. We have explained Aristotle's concept of plot, concept of character, concept of thought, concept of diction, concept of spectacle, concept of chorus. We've looked at that. We've also explained why Atamela disagrees with Aristotle's choice of tragic character. We have looked at all these. Now, the question is, what is your view on the debate between Atamela and Aristotle on the criteria for the tragic character? That's one thing you must be thinking about as you engage the text. Any question up to this point? Yeah, any question up to this point? No, sir. All right. If there are no questions, then maybe we'll look at, I mentioned to you that we'll be looking at T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot also has an essay, a number of essays that we need to look at some of them and discuss them. Good. Now, in T.S. Eliot's view, there are a number of things that we can look at. Let me try to explain this man called T.S. Eliot. He is one of the strong poets, essayists, playwrights, also dramatist, and a novelist. Now, he also theorizes, and his writings helps us to come to terms with a theory. When we're studying poetry, we mentioned free verse, we mentioned imagism, and so on. Now, all these are things or concepts that came from T.S. Eliot and his people, and their view is that we shouldn't make the writing of creative writing so difficult a thing that one needs to follow conventions. And if you're not able to follow convention, you cannot write it. So his concept of modernism came in to soften the stance in writing. However, in the paper titled Tradition and Individual Talents, T.S. Eliot attempts to take us through some concepts. Now, the paper Tradition and Individual Talents was written in 1919. It was written in 1919. And it is one of the very well-known works that Eliot produced in his capacity as a critic. It is one of well-known works that Eliot produced in his capacity as a critic. And as I've mentioned earlier, he attempts to do two things in this paper. One, he shows how to do criticism. And he also shows how to compose an artwork. So if you want to know how to critique a work, this paper is good for you. If you want to know how to compose an artwork, this paper is also good for you. Now, the essay is a critique to how the early critics did their criticism on a work of art. That's poetry and literature in general. Right. McQueen, but you yakunya homa me why? Made them homa me. So, Mechazi, more here. Madasi. Minyan internet for me, they want to make pay hard. Yeah. So he attempted to do two things, as I mentioned, how to do criticism and how to compose. And the essay is a critique to how the early English critics did their criticism on work of art. I've mentioned that the earlier English critics were always insisting that whatever one wrote must conform to a tradition. That's right. I mean, sure. That won't perform. When we are war. No, say man, no. Yeah. And we yeah. For them, if they critique any work, one major thing that they look for was that is your work situated within the context of one of the earlier writings. So if your work did not conform to the conventions of earlier writings, that's not a good work. So tradition individual talent is a response to such positions. So the paper present Eliot's influential conception of the relationship between the poets and the literary tradition. The poet and the literary tradition that precedes him. By this, we are saying that just like we are all we all have people preceding us. Writers also have others who wrote before them. So the paper seeks to say that can there be a relationship between those who wrote yesterday and those who are writing today? Can there be a relationship between those who wrote yesterday and those who are writing today? Right. So traditional talents, the essay brings out three major concepts. One is the concept of tradition. We shall look at it. The concept of tradition. The second is the theory of impersonal poetry. It is also called depersonalization. Impersonal poetry, also called depersonalization. Then we have the conclusion. Right. So I've said the paper is in response to how earlier English critics critique works by forcing to impose conventions on writers. And that Eliot seeks to move away from that in his paper. The paper, we have said, is in three parts. The first part talks about the concept of tradition. The second part talks about the theory of impersonal poetry. And then the conclusion is the third part. Right. Any question up to this point? Any question? I hope you are with me. No breakings now.
Yes, Prof.
Yes, we are with you, Prof.
The lines are not breaking.
No.
No.
And you are making notes.
Yes, Prof.
When the notes came, no, just one voice, yes, Prof. The rest are not making notes. Me, I'm teaching. Now, we have said that the paper focuses on three things. The first one is tradition, the concept of tradition. Now, tradition is regarded generally as a word of censure. Censure. What do you mean of censure? Censure. What do you mean of censure? Censure. Oh, no one is speaking. Are you aware that the television stations and radio stations undergo some censorship. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Are you aware that the censorship in our radio stations and television stations?
Yes, please.
Yes,
So what's the
please.
censor? What's the censorship?
A form of control.
Thank you. Why do you take a long time to say it? Censorship is a form of control. So tradition is generally regarded as a word of censure. A word of censure. So though this word, this is a bit disagreeable to the English ears. That the English people don't want to hear it so much, but then it's the truth. It's the truth. Now, when the English praise a poet, they praise him for those aspects of his work which are individual and original. Individual and original. Because of that, we have many movements coming up. So, for example, if you had a group of poets called metaphysicals because they are original and they are individual, another group came up as romantics, also original, individual. Another group came up as Augustans, individual. So there's so many of them. So T.S. Eliot says that can we do away with this idea of individual all the time and original all the time? Because whatever you are, whether in an individual or not, you are linked to a root. You are linked to a root. So it's supposed that his chief merit lies in such parts. That is, the undue stress on individuality shows that the English have an uncritical turn of mind. The fact that the individual must be unique, 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 shows that the earlier poet did not have the tendency, the opportunity to look back, turn of mind, to look back. They praise poets for the wrong thing. They praise poet for the wrong thing. The wrong thing as in being solely individualistic. So, where if we approach a poet without his prejudice, we shall often find that not only the best, but the most individual part of the work may be those in which the dead poet, his ancestors, assert their immortality most vigorously. The point I'm making here is that though the person appears an individual to have composed his poem, and I will praise him for the poem he has composed, if you go deep into the poem, you see that it is not an individual thing, but then it is something that he has picked from some ancient poets. For example, if you look at the man called Shakespeare, there are some things that he has written that we may say that, oh, Shakespeare's work. But if you go deep into it, they are not Shakespeare's work. He borrowed them from somewhere. So if you want to look at individuality, find that Shakespeare individual. But if we go deeper into him, you see that he is not the individual we are talking about. There are some people in the work. We have people who sing around the world today. For example, in Ghana. In Ghana, most musicians of today will sing and want to borrow some lines, some expressions from earlier singers. Right. Meanwhile, the person will say, I compose it. T.S. Eliot is saying that, no, that cannot be. The moment we see an ancient element in the work you are doing, this idea of individuality must be looked at again. So Eliot presents his concept of tradition and the definition of poets and poetry in relation to tradition. By whose tradition, by whose who forms your background, by whose perspective are you writing? The term tradition is associated with a special and complex character. It's associated with a special and complex character. Now, the character here does not mean a blind adherence to the ways of previous traditions. No. Doesn't mean that you blindly go and copy somebody and bring it to say that tradition. No. It presents a simultaneous order in which involves a historical timelessness, a fusion of past and present, and at the same time, a sense of present temporality. Yes, in writing, in composing, we can, of course, borrow ideas from the past. It's allowed. Then we borrow ideas from the past and we bring in some newness. It's also allowed. But it might be done in such a way that the past and the newness might bring something new. So if I look at the work, I should be able to trace some historical past in the work, and also see some sense of present. Today in Ghana, if you look at our hip life artists, the way they sing, do we think they are very new in the way they sing, or we can trace them to the past? What do you think, class? The hip life artists, can we trace them to anything in the past, or they are absolutely new in every sense? Yeah, Joyce.
Thank you. Please, you can trace them back to the past. It's not everything about them that is new. Because, for example, if you take Alibede, the music, that thing has been there since I was in primary school. I don't even know when it was there. It's like I was born to meet it. By his song, he brought it in. Then there is this song, I think Becca, to Bobby. That song too, I came to meet it, but she used it in her song. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jessica?
Yes, Doc. Please, I also agree with my sister. They tap knowledge from the predecessors or existing traditions, phrases, expressions, and then use it to form their music. Yes.
Right. So just as the gentleman called Solomon said in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, that there's nothing new under the sun, comes to play here. There's nothing new under the sun, comes to play here. So T.S. Eliot is saying that don't let us be so happy that somebody has produced something, but let us show awareness of where the person is coming from, what the person is adding to the whole thing. And then by that, we can say, oh, okay, the work is good. In fact, it is when you have been able to blend the old and the new so well that you can say you're a good artist. But if it's just copying and pasting, then you are creating or you are causing a problem. How do you call it in academia, where you don't acknowledge a source of information you have taken from someone? How do you call it in academia? Charity?
Plagiarism.
Thank you, plagiarism. So to kill this idea of plagiarism, T.S. Eliot says that let us show awareness of tradition, where one is coming from, the historical past which brings in idea of timelessness, and then we can also bring out the present, that is sense of present temporality. Good. So tradition can only be obtained by those who have historical sense. So if you play a song and a song has some old things in it, the old men and old women will say, hey, I remember this song. It was played in the 1960s, the 1930s, 1940s. They remember because it has what? Some historical sense. The historical sense involves a perception not only of the past, but of its presence and relevance. So the historical past is not just because the history is there, but how relevant is it in contemporary times? How relevant is it in contemporary times? So if just as when we are writing, make references to the past, and the references that will be to the past, I will make because they are of importance to what we are saying now. They're not we don't just quote them simply because we feel like quoting. I quote them because they are important for us to quote. Right. Now, tradition means that a writer or an artist should always bear in mind that literature is a continuous process. Writing is a continuous process. We must always bear in mind that writing is a continuous process. It's not something that started just today, nor to end tomorrow. No. So what others have done in the past, whatever we are doing now, we are continuing with that. We are continuing with that. It's a continuous process. Continuation of art forms that already exist. The emphasis emphasizing the significance of the past in the present literary creation. Good. Now, I did mention to you when we're doing contemporary writing that if you look at our how do you call it, written literature, the form of written literature, the nature of written literature, sometimes even the missing written literature are all borrowed from oral literature. So therefore, it's a continuation. It's a continuation. And the continuation is done such that it is modified to suit present taste. So the past is there, but the past is shaped to reflect present taste. That is what TSL is saying. Now, LT is of the view that tradition is not fixed. It's not fixed nor static. It is constantly changing, growing, and becoming different from what it was, and goes through modifications. So, as I said, in the book titled The Marriage of Anansoa, we all saw the marriage of Anansi's daughter. And I told you that it's an adaptation because in the Anansi story that we know, Anansi never had a daughter. Anansi's children were all boys, and they were as stubborn as Anansi himself. Anansi never used a car. Anansi never read newspapers in the stories. But then in Marriage of Anansoa, Anansi read the newspaper. Anansi had a fridge in his house and all those things. All these point to the fact that tradition is not fixed, it's not static, it is constantly changing and growing and becoming different from what it was. That it goes through modification all the time. So when a new book is created, the whole literary tradition is modified. When a new song is composed, the whole literary tradition of singing is modified. When a new story is told, the whole system of storytelling is modified. That's what happens. The relationship between the past and the present is not one-sided. It is reciprocal. It's not one-sided, it's reciprocal. What does it mean to say that the relationship between the past and present is not one-sided and it's reciprocal? What does it mean? Because I'm waiting for you to answer.
One depends on another.
You
They
don't just
depend
do
on
that.
each other.
We say raise your hand and we'll call you to talk. You don't just get up and start talking. Please. Yeah. So it's like two cutlasses or two metals sharpening each other, reciprocal. The modern can modify the past, and the past can also modify the modern or the present. Yeah. The modern gets modified through the past, and the past gets modified through the modern. So as she said, the song Tutu Bovi, we know how to sing it. So Tutu Bovi, that is there. Then Becca comes and says, can we say Tutu Bovi? to Bobby. Change the tune. So that which is old have been made new and beautiful. And then when the old ones are listening, they say, oh, it looks nice. So it's reciprocal. Right. The past directs the present and is itself modified and altered by the present. The past directs the present and is itself modified and altered by the present. Right. So there's that kind of relationship between them. Now, in T.S. Eliot's work, tradition plays very important role. Please, the paper is tradition and digital talent. Just Google online, you get a paper, tradition and the individual talent. You get a paper to read, I beg you. The work of art of a poet in the present is to be compared and contrasted with the works of the past. This judgment is not to look for a good or a bad work. If we look at the work in the past and look at the work in the present, our intention is not to look to say that one is good, one is bad, or something. No, we are not interested in that. The comparison is for knowing the fact about the new work. The comparison is one, knowing the fact about the new work. Where is it coming from? Who is influencing it? But when the facts are known by the new work, we are okay. The comparison, again, is for the purpose of analysis and forming better understanding of the new. So if I look at Tutu Bovi in its modern tune, they say, oh, okay, this one came from it's a Volta region lullaby. Okay, the girl has modified it. Who is this girl, Becca? Is she a Voltarian? I want to know. How does Becca pronounce the word Bovi? Is that the right way to pronounce it? If that's the right way to pronounce it, the way she has pronounced it, is it better now? So it helps in analysis of the text and also forming better understanding of the new. It doesn't mean to know the past as a whole without discrimination. No, we don't need to know the entirety of the past before we can do this. But then a little about the present is enough. The sense of tradition does not mean that the poet should know only a few poets whom he admires, a particular age or a period which he likes. This is a sign of immaturity and inexperience. So if you've been observing me, you realize that when I'm teaching, I try to go to the past and bring so many information to bear on what I'm teaching. So tradition does not mean look for that small thing, the small corner, and then go by it. No. There's more to do. There's more that we can do about the past. Right. So that brings us to tradition. Any question on tradition before we go to the issue of impersonality or poetry and then the depersonalization and so on? Any question on tradition? Right. If there are no questions on tradition, then let's go to this concept of impersonality. And I told you that impersonality, also called depersonalization, is a way of showing how to write and how to critique a work. So if you are a writer, you are writing. How do you write? If you are a critic and you are critiquing a work, how do you do it? In any case, what the meaning of depersonalization or impersonality or poetry? What does it mean? Can someone attempt it for us to explain depersonalization? Yeah? Jessica?
Thank you. I think impersonality or depersonalization is the situation where you look at a work from an objective point of view, not subjective. That is relating it to the standard that has been laid down. Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Any other? Any other? Yeah, Joyce.
Thank you, Doc. So in that case, it's like you de-associate yourself from the work, or you don't take things too personal with it, but you measure it by the standard, the standard at the moment. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other? Any other? Yeah. Is this Sam? Nat.
Yeah. Yes, Doc. So I see it as the situation where you leave out your personal biases, so that you try to look at the issues objectively without bringing in your personal biases. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So you have all made meaningful input into the discussion. When we talk of impersonality or talk of depersonalization, from two sides. One, the artist, that the one who is writing or who is composing, must surrender himself or herself to tradition. Must surrender himself or herself to tradition. Such an artist must allow his poetic sensibility to be shaped and modified by the past. It must be shaped and modified by the past. His emotions and feelings must be depersonalized. That is, he must be as impersonal and objective. That is, you do not put yourself in it, as you have all said. So if I'm writing, I shouldn't write to reflect myself in the work. I shouldn't write to reflect myself in the work. I should distance myself from the work. So as I stand here, if you go online and you pick any paper I have written there, and you read the paper, and you ask me things about that paper, I'll tell you I don't know. Because after writing it, I don't associate myself with the paper. I can myself take the paper and critique it and say that the encounter on whoever did it could have done this or that or that or that. So you take yourself out of the work. You don't put your emotions in it, so that if somebody critiques the work, then you get peeved. The personality of the artist is not important. The important thing is his sense of tradition. And the tradition here refers to one, if you are writing poetry, how do we write poetry? How the time had passed? How did our ancestors write poems? You follow that. If you're writing drama, how is drama written? You follow that. If you're writing prose, how is prose written? You follow that. That's tradition. If you are structuring a story, how do you do it? How do you tell it? That's a tradition. But you as a person in it, it's not important. We don't need you in it. We don't need you. So the poet's personality is merely a medium. The poet's personality is only a medium through which the work is done. So if you go to the Bible, it will tell you that we are tools for use. We are only vessels for use. And that God uses us, and after using us, we are nobody. That is the poet. That is the artist. So when you sit down to write and you write, after writing, that is the end. You don't owe anything. You don't put yourself in it. Nobody cares about you. The concentration is on the work. Don't forget, yesterday we mentioned that it's about what is said and how it is said. So the critic's interest in all this is what he says and how he says it, and not who says it. The interest is in what is said, how it is said, and not who says it. The who is not part of it. So the poet is only a medium of presentation. The focus of an analysis or criticism should therefore be on the work of art and not on the person or the personality behind the work. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, bro.
Thank you. So if you pick anybody's work and you want to critique it, you have no business mentioning the person's name in the work. Yours is to refer to the paper or the book. You're going to bring the person in it, for example, Amatedu and Edu. No. It is about the book. In Changes, in The Realm of a Ghost, in Anwa, that's what you do. You don't mention the one behind the book. No. So the personality of the artist is not important in the work of art. And that the critic must not in any way come into the character or the personality of the artist. Jessica, your hand is up. Any problem?
Yes, please. Please, in critiquing a work of art, where we are not supposed to bring in the artist or the poet or the author. Now, if, for instance, Changes is written by so many people, when you go trying to critique it, how do you then specify the exact changes you are referring to if you don't have to mention the name?
Because Changes is not written by so many people. There's only one book titled Changes, The Love Story by Amatedu. When you mention Changes, the life story, we all know who wrote it.
There was this poem we're looking for, I think last block or so. Went online and we made different poems of such title.
And the poem is just fine. The contents.
Hello. Hello.
Lantilka.
I think he has muted himself.
Yeah, I said the contents of the just fine I asked you to look for will definitely indicate the kind of just fine you're talking about. So the content, so it is what is said and how it is said, not who said it. Are you okay?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, Anastasia?
Yes, Prof. Thank you. Prof, I would like to state a clarification. When we read studies in Shakespeare, there was one of his poems that we were told was addressed was from a woman to a man. I've just forgotten the number. And when we listen to his personal life, he getting married to a woman who is older than him. Some of us held the view that that poem, he wrote that poem based on maybe the woman is the one who approached him. Like the woman got attracted to him, Shakespeare. And so that's a poem about a passage of time and beauty and all that. So when you want to critique such a poem, how are you going to critique it in a sense that you don't end up attacking the poet, but rather you are standing as a subjective critic?
You are mixing up
Thank
the
you.
you are mixing up the terms. You stand out as an objective critic, not subjective
As an
critic.
objective, yes, as an objective critic. Because I personally, when I
You
read
you
that poem,
you
I felt he came from
you
that
realize
is
that
from personal experience.
the moment you bring in Shakespeare, you close all possible interpretations to the poem. Do you see that? The moment you made the poem a reflection of Shakespeare's life, it becomes meaningless. Then why are we reading it? But if you look at a poem as a work of art, then young guys of today can also look at it and say, can I read this poem to my girlfriend or to my husband or to my wife? The way to make it Shakespeare's poem, you make it Shakespeare's personal life. You have killed the poem.
All right.
And the
So
poem is on the
that's
poem is
clear.
Sonnet 18. Sonnet
Okay.
18 is a beautiful poem, and it's not limited to Shakespeare. It's about comparing, looking at the beauty in nature and then linking the beauty to one's loved one, and then the possibility of reliving or letting the person live forever. If I want my loved one to live forever, how do I do it? I put it into writing. And so long as people read about that person in the what I've written, the person lives. That's the point Shakespeare is making in that poem. So if you interpret it
All right,
and you
bro. Thank you.
limit it to Shakespeare, you have killed the beauty of the poem. Right. So T.S. Eliot, in his concept of tradition, marrying it with depersonalization, denounces some views that some critics have put forward. For example, the romantic criticism, which says that in the process of poetic composition, there's neither emotions nor recollection nor tranquility. Right? In poetic process, there's only concentration of a number of experiences, and a new thing results from this concentration. So yes, when you are writing, you want to write from your personal experiences, that's fine. But would you want to talk about your personal experiences as uniquely personal experiences, but you try to come up with experiences that shape and create some newness? Eliot presents that the experiences that enter the poetic process may be of two kinds. That is, emotions and feelings. Emotions and feelings. Poetry may be composed out of emotions only, or out of feelings only, or out of both. So not necessarily Shakespeare's experience as in loving. No. It goes beyond that. It goes beyond that. So Eliot presents poetry as a turning loose of emotions, but an escape from emotions. It's not a turning loose of emotions, but an escape from emotions. It's not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. You get a point? It's not an expression of personality. It's not expression of you yourself, but then it is coming out of you and saying something. Just as some of you go to church, and when the Spirit of God comes upon you, you prophesy. That prophecy is not about you, but it's coming out of you. Or you get up to preach, Those of you who preach, sometimes you preach and realize that the sermon you are preaching goes against you. The things you are saying, you are guilty of them. But then because the Spirit's upon you, you say them without any attempt to hold it back, because it's not you who it matters in this. The message must come. You are used only as a vessel. So Eliot says that poetry is not a turning loose of emotions. It's not a turning loose of emotions, but an escape from emotions. Or it's not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. That's what T.S. Eliot put forward. So if we put everything together, then we will say that according to T.S. Eliot, poetry is an escape from emotions. It is not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality. 2, Eliot doesn't deny personality or emotions to the poet. He only, the poet must only depersonalize his emotions. A poet cannot reach this impersonality without surrounding himself wholly to the work to be done. That the poet can only know what is to be done if he acquires a sense of tradition, the historic sense, which makes him conscious not only of the present, but also of the present, not only of present, but also of the present moment of the past. These are the things that T.S. Eliot tries to put forward. T.S. Eliot tries to put forward. Good. Any question? Any question? Yeah, let's hear you. Kojo.
All right, thank you so much, Prof. Prof, I don't know if I am going to grab the class back a bit, but my hand has been up for a while. That is why I wanted to seek a little clarity on this. Prof, let's say you are talking about a particular piece of art, and you make reference to that. Does it mean you are introducing a personal thing? Because the lady spoke earlier and was saying, let's say the books are many or the titles are many, but there you clear that there are books. Of course, the contents will indicate the kind of artwork that they are talking about. But Prof, my issue is, so if I say Amatedu's changes, without talking about Amatedu, but then talking about the actual work, I still don't see how personal this thing is going to be, Prof. Thank you so much.
Anastasia, can we hear you?
Thank you, Prof. From all that you said about impersonality of the poet, I am getting an understanding. I just want to say clarification. That is, from all that you said, it means, according to T.S. Eliot, the poetry is just art for an art's sake. It's not anything personal. It is just a piece of art, just for an art's sake. That's what I want to, like, the whole thing you said. This is how I am understanding it, and I just want to be sure about my understanding. Thank you.
I see. I think I beg to differ in that sense. Poetry or art cannot be art for art's sake. When you were studying poetry, we talked about generic functions of poetry and instrumental functions of poetry. So if artwork will have that instrumental function, then art is not for art's sake. Art performs functions. The point I'm making is that just as I alluded to in Sonnet 18, the moment you tie the one who wrote it to his work or her work, you have killed the expansion of any interpretation. If I look at Abenwaha by Lumba as a song that Lumba composed because he found a girl and was interested in that girl and said, okay, that girl is Abenwaha. Then how do I go out there and apply this concept to other things? Abenwaha. If I look at Ampedu's song titled Agatha Shumenim, and it's all about Agatha of Ampedu, then how do I look at my wife, my girlfriend's face, and then sing the song to her? That is the point that the T.S. Eliot is saying. So it's not art for our sake. But then when we decide to take away this idea of depersonalization, it opens the space for us to apply the concept in so many contexts. It gives an opportunity to make the work relevant across time and space. Make the work relevant across time and space. If we tie it so much to the one who wrote it or the one who composed it, it becomes limited. It doesn't have that universal application or universal relevance. It doesn't. Good. Now, the case of Edu, as Kojo wanted to put out there, I think I've answered him in this. You see, it's not about mentioning the person that matters, or not mentioning a person that matters, but limiting the concept to a person. In any case, this course is criticism. So at the end of it, I'll ask you, do you agree with T.S. Eliot? Do you agree with Atamela? Do you agree with Aristotle? If you don't agree with them, why don't you agree with them? If I agree with them, why do you agree with them? When we started, I told you that the course is supposed to open us our critical sense. So we're going to critique the things I've said and present it to you as they are presented. But then we'll have time to critique them. Are we okay?
Yes, Prof.
All right. So we are done with T.S. Eliot. We are done with Atamela and then others. There's one entity who also talks about tradition that we need to look at. But I don't want to start today because if I start, we'll not finish. So maybe we'll continue next time. Let me also say that Saturday we will not be able to meet. There's a festival going on in my village, and I must be part of the festival. So we'll not be able to meet. On Saturday. So I don't know. Can we do it on Thursday? Can we meet on Thursday evening as this? Hello.
Prof, I think we can make it a Monday and Tuesday.
We can.
Yeah,
do it
this
Monday and
coming
Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
Like with
Then
next.
I hear you. So please look for those papers I've talked about. Tradition Individual Talent by T.S. Eliot, Atamela, the Tragedy of Common Man, and then Poetics by the man called Aristotle. So when we come back on Monday, I'll open the space for you. When I come back on Monday, I'll talk about Toni Morrison's Rootedness, the Ancestors Foundation, and we'll be done with this ideas of tradition, and I will critique the papers as we have read. Is that right? If you don't read them, you will not be able to make any meaningful input. So please read them.
Please, can you go over the books again?
They are not books, they are papers. Aristotle's Poetics, Artemeles' Tradition, Artemeles' Tragedy and a Common Man, and then T.S. Eliot's Tradition and Individual Palate. Right. On that note, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Prof.
sir.
For your time.
Good evening, Prof.
Have you read the papers?
Never come to class and say you have not read.
Hello.
Hello. Hey.
From PMP the party here.